Hello everybody. So today I want to give you some update on TransMedics, a stock that I bought roughly 1 year ago. The last time I covered it was 6 months ago, and I was excited about, of course, the 4 year out, 5 year out guidance that they had given by then of 10,000 transplants. I'm still excited about that long-term guidance because I'm a long-term investor. I hold stocks for a very, very long run. That's what I do. I don't like to trade much between positions. I like to stay with a narrative, with a story for a decade, preferably, until I know this company very well. And of course, the stock has run up quite a bit. It's up 121% since my last video. And so what I'm going to try to answer here is, what am I doing with TransMedics? Is it still a buy? What's going on with this stock? Why is it going so well? Is it going to keep doing well? So let's go. TransMedics. First of all, let's talk about what they do. What they do is the reason why it took me a while to look at that stock, because I was like, I don't want to be in that business, the organ donor business. It's a sad business to be in, because what you do is you have donors. Of course, the donors are deceased, and then you take the organs and you transplant the organs to a matching recipient. And there's many problems. The problem is that the recipient needs to be found, and oftentimes that recipient is not local, not in your city, and because of that, you need to transport the organ. Historically, these organs were transported on dry ice on private jets. You can't transport an organ like this on a commercial flight. That's something for movies. That's not the reality. Historically, you've had to do it on private jets on dry ice. TransMedics comes, and they've developed this now FDA-approved Organ Care System, which is the same system, and it's got a slightly different pouch depending on the organ, and it keeps the organ alive for multiple days after it is received and transmitted into the machine. And this creates a lot of benefits. A, you can fly with the organ, and you can go further ahead. B, the organ lasts longer in the machine. C, it's better for the surgeon, it's better for the patient, because you can actually do the transplant during the day. D, it's much more likely to be a successful transplant because of the fact that the organ has been kept alive. There's many, many benefits. Their medical benefits. Feel free to go into the call, feel free to go into the company to look at all of the specific benefits. They're working on tiny improvements on those machines. They have hundreds of patents on those machines. They are the real deal as far as I can tell in this machine. They're disrupting dry ice in the organ transplant business. And why is this business growing? Well, this business is growing because it's going after a blue ocean opportunity. It's going after a market that is really not addressed, which is the fact that most donated organs, this is their chart from the national data, US national data, most donated organs actually don't get transplanted. And this is especially true for heart, especially true for lungs. You can see how many donations of organs happened in 2023, and this is how many of each for the entire market were transplanted. So they are addressing those transplants that can't happen, that could not happen in the past, that now can happen with the organ care system. And how do they do that? How have they been able to do that? Well, it is thanks to their system, their NOP, National OCS Program, which is their system, cleverly named, if you ask me. They name something as it is something official, run by the governments, cleverly named, kind of like Standard Oil. Anyways, tangent, but I'm not going to go. Cleverly named, I find. And they have, of course, their own transportation center, their own control center, their own planes, their own technology, their own experts, and they are taking over that market. At least it seems they're doing very well. It's important to note that they're already in a high-growth industry, and of course, this is already a high-growth industry. Why? Because the U.S., the adult population is aging, and so when you're aging, you need more and more of these procedures that happen later in life, and so this is a market that's already growing organically. by 12%, and they themselves are going much faster than the market. They're growing at 130% last year. Last year, they grew their transplants by 130%. This is quite amazing. Now, about the topic of competition, can they have competition? Well, yeah, they have competition. That competition is called dry ice. That competition is people who don't want to use the new system, right? Surgeons who don't want to use the new system. Hospital systems who don't want to use the new device that they created and who are just doing it the old way, the legacy way, the dry ice way. And that's why TMDX is doing everything to keep improving that device, to keep convincing medical providers to adopt that device. And they publish and they show you the benefits of the device. And this device may one day become something close to a monopoly in that sector. That's the one competitive advantage, number one. The second one, of course, is an airline. But guess what? An airline that is actually profitable, which is nuts to think about. Not to quote the Buffett and Munger quotes, but airlines are historically the only business you put $1 in, you get 60 cents back. You have negative returns. Well, they have a positive return because we're transporting very, very, very high value transplants, right? A transplant is multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars, and so this is very high value. This is a flight for school that they had bought, and they are still buying more planes, hiring more pilots. They bought 2 planes in the last quarter. We'll get to that in a second. They actually transplant with their own planes only 59%. They don't have a fleet big enough to deal with their growth yet. They're still growing the fleet of airplanes. So the product is obviously being adopted by the market quite a bit. The growth is 130% year over year compared to 2022. That's point number one. If you calculate it quarter to quarter, so I calculated it from Q2 2024 from Q2 2023, that growth was 118% in revenue growth. So pretty darn close. Very, very high growth. And here's a question that I have for you, and this is usually how I look at sales growth in the stock, is that if the revenue grows 118% over the past 12 months, like it has right now, if you compare to Q2 2024, 118%, so we see a slight deceleration, right? When you add the 2 extra quarters, you went from 130 to 118, you see a slight deceleration. It's normal. The law of larger numbers is kicking in. But when revenue growth grows 118%, and if the stock price were to grow 118% and the price to sell remains the same, then the stock price is the same. Like if the stock price grows 118% and the sales grow 118%, in my view, the stock price from a price to sell basis has not changed. This is the case for many stocks I cover on this channel. This is not the case for TMDX. TMDX stock price has grown faster than revenue, so it's not good. It's not a good thing. But there is a reason why the stock price has grown faster than the revenue. It is because they, in Q2 2023, right, so they were still showing negative EBITDA for a full year back then, right, and their EBITDA in 2023 was zero. They had just broken even on EBITDA. They are now EBITDA profitable, and nicely EBITDA profitable. They now have 17 million in EBITDA at the last reported quarter. So, and they have GAAP earnings too, by the way. So the operating leverage is kicking in for this company. Hence the valuation going up, because a lot of investors out there care a lot about profitability, GAAP profitability, and so this is a stock that when I entered it, I don't have any problems entering a stock that doesn't have GAAP profitability again. But that's what happens all the time when you enter a stock that's too early. Whenever they start kicking in that profitability, they become more expensive. It's just the nature of the game. So that can explain that additional growth in the stock price compared to the revenue growth. But by all means, the stock, it looks like it's up 197%. Keep in mind, the revenue is up 118%. So you're not buying the same company. This is a company that's literally more than twice as big today than it was 12 months ago. You're not buying the same company. What else do we have that's good? Let's look at the conference call, the last conference call. So you can see 59% of their flights are operated by them. They're still adding aircrafts, right? Which is why right now, the gross margins, the margins are still impacted by them investing in aircrafts. But the CEO is fully confident that the gross margin will improve in the next 12 to 18 months. Will the gross margin get to something like 70%? I think it's possible. They, and this is what I love, they restate again every call, they restate their goal and being on track for their goal to 10,000 transplants by 2028. 10,000 by 2028. So that's not quite, but almost. I'm going to round it up and call it almost a 4x in sales by 2028. It's almost that. We're almost there. So this is a business that's likely going to be 4 times bigger in a matter of 5 years. And the last report, they got a lot of good stuff, and they gave us guidance. At the last Q2, they updated the guidance, and they say, for the full year, they are going for the full year 2024. They are going to grow between 76 to plus 84% growth compared to FY 2023. So taking the middle here, they're guiding for 80% sales. Well, guess what? Analysts are not buying it. If you look at analysts' prediction for the next 12 months, analysts are telling this company will grow at 84%. So is the management sandbagging a little bit? Well, I guess so, because they guided up in Q2, and of course, we've come out of 2023, which sandbagging was the main trend, and CEO under-promising was the main trend. So, of course, there's likely a little bit of sandbagging, which is why analysts are predicting them to grow faster than what they even guided, or at least the higher range. So is this stock expensive on my spreadsheet? You would think this is an expensive stock given the run. Well, it's not that expensive on an enterprise value over gross profit over revenue growth. This metric right there is me answering the question, how much am I paying for that growth? How expensive is the next year's growth, the future growth? How expensive is it? It's a 0.28. It's in the first tier of the cheapest stocks. But what is particularly special for this company, of course, is the rule of 40, because they've achieved 12% EBITDA margin at the last quarter, and that's going to be more likely going forward. So they're likely going to break the rule of 100. They are at a rule of 96 right now. They're likely going to break the rule of 100. And of course, this valuation in my spreadsheet is somewhat special. This is a good value for my spreadsheet. Definitely not the cheapest, right? This is not like as cheap as, say, a HIMSS, for example. But this is quite cheap. But this, on the other hand, for a rule of 40, this is particularly special. You're getting into a class of 3. There's only 3 stocks in my spreadsheet that achieve higher than a 96. There's only 3 of them. And I'll give you a secret that's not so well kept here. One of the over 2 that reach that level of rule of 40 in the 120 plus hypergrowth stocks that I screen is NVIDIA, right? And this is no surprise. NVIDIA is one of those stocks. And in fact, so I just took randomly. The problem is NVIDIA, of course, we have much more of a look back. It's a much older company. So over the long run, NVIDIA performs much better. I don't want to hide that. But if you just look at the past, 3.7 years, but you can put 4 years roughly the same. You can put 3 years. If you put 3 years, 2 years, 1 year in the difference, TMDX actually beats NVIDIA if you put a 1 year or a 2 year. But you can see that TMDX has been roughly matching NVIDIA's return roughly for the past almost 4 years, right? 77%. That's how well this stock has performed. Like I said, as far as the rule of 100 goes, as far as the rule of 40 and exceeding it, and how many times can you exceeding it? This is in a class of 3 stocks that I've identified so far in my spreadsheet. But my spreadsheet has a main flaw, as I always say on this channel. The flaw is looking at next 12 months. We look at next 12 months. Why? Because most CEOs only guide for the next 12 months. But as a long-term investor, I care much more about the next 10 years. So we don't quite add that from TMDX. As I said, we have the next 4 years for TMDX, but we can imply a long-term growth rate, right? So I'm going to use transplants for a proxy for revenue, and I'm going to assume that the price per transplant doesn't move in any way until 2028, right? Relax these assumptions in your own analysis of the stock. No investment advice, of course. Choose whatever you prefer. But in calendar year 2023, we're in 2,300 transplants. In 2028, they said by year end 2028, they will do 10,000. You put this in a CAGR calculator. What do you get? You get 34%. Compound average annual growth rate. That's pretty. That's security right there. The CEOs guided you that, so that's security. There's no such thing this CEO is guiding that there will be no such surprise as the company growing at 50% in 1 year, and then all of a sudden, no, it's 10%. Like these bad surprises we kept having for a lot of stock in 2022 and 2023. We have long-term guidance. Long-term guidance is protective in my view. It makes an investment much less risky, and so I can justify paying up a little more compared to the cheapest stocks for something that has a long-term guidance. The company, by the way, is not that expensive. It's trading at 8 times forward sales. So again, this is not nearly as expensive as, say, a software. This company is trading roughly in line with Tesla's valuation. But I'll give you a hint. Tesla is not predicted to grow at 84% or 85% in the next 12 months. So that's the main difference. Roughly trading the same valuation on a price sales basis as Tesla. Much higher margins than a Tesla. And I love Tesla, in this channel, I love Tesla. Assuming the price to sell doesn't change much, assuming it stays roughly the same, you're at a 4x in the amount of transplants that they do. If price to sales remains the same, that could potentially be a 4x in 5 years in the stock price. No investment advice. So in conclusion, I am tracking this stock closely. I own it. I'm way up on it. I am tracking this stock for any dips, and if there's any dips, I may consider adding. And by the way, I have a Patreon now, so anything I buy, I just broadcast it in the Patreon. So if you're on that, you will know. I'm still making these announcements at the end of my video for a little while because I just launched it literally 3 days ago. So bear with me. I'll stop presenting it in a few videos, but for now, I launched a Patreon. There's everything that I do in the Patreon. There's my portfolio. There's my 0 to 1 company analysis. There's my hypergrowth spreadsheet. There's going to be custom announcements, polls on the channel. There's a Discord access. I'm trying to build this. I'm investing a lot of time trying to build this community because I'm so grateful of the support that I've gotten. And I thank you all who have already registered to the Patreon. We are a little more than 50 people right now on the Patreon. So I am very excited to have the support of 50 people. This is amazing. I know I'm a small YouTuber. I know I'm very small. I know I don't even have 10,000 people following me compared to a lot of these huge channels on YouTube. I seem very small. But I'm so excited for your support. So thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you've decided to join the Patreon, I really appreciate it. And TMDX, frankly, in my view, I love that stock. It's a pretty darn good stock, and it's been a pleasant surprise to own it. So no investment advice, no financial advice ever. Of course, this is just entertainment. My Patreon too. My Patreon is an entertainment-only channel. I hope you're entertained, but that's all it is. No financial advice. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.